The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us for this webinar, open webinar, called What's New in RhinoCAM 2021 and VisualCAD CAM 2021. Actually, it's what's new in our CAM products. We also have another product called VisualCAM for SolidWorks. Typically, at the last Wednesday of the month, we do a webinar only specifically for maintenance customers. But today we're doing this as an open webinar to everybody who's interested in looking at our products. And so there might be some of you who don't know much about our products, so we'll go a little bit slower than normal. My name is Joe Anand, and I'm the product manager here at Microsoft. I will be joined today by Uday Honalekare, our support manager, who will actually be doing the demonstration and showing you what's new in our products. Before we get started, a few housekeeping tips. We would like to keep this webinar as interactive as possible. And so, before that, let me also mention that the recording of this webinar will be made available to all of you once give us a chance to get this video cleaned up, and then we will post it on YouTube, and we'll send out the YouTube link to all our registrants. And as I mentioned before, we want to keep this interactive as possible, this webinar. To that effect, you can type your questions in the chat window in the GoToWebinar panel that down here. This window is shown as the red arrow pointing in the slide. I will be in the background monitoring the questions as they come in and answering them, and so feel free to be as communicative as possible. If you have any questions, I'll make my best effort to answer it. And if we need to show something in the product, we'll also stop with it and try to show it as well. So, okay, next slide, Uday. So today our webinar is going to be split into 3 parts. There's basically the agenda is initially I will be going over a very little, time, take a little bit of time and talk about our Microsoft products. For those of you who might not be familiar with our products. Then we're going to the demo portion that they will be actually running. And then after that, we have another, we'll take a few minutes after that as well and talk about some additional information and how we can upgrade support and sales and things of that nature. So let's start with just a products overview, our products. As for those of you who are not familiar, we have 3 products that we currently sell and support. We have a standalone CAD-CAM product. For those of you who don't have a CAD product, this would be the product of choice. It's called VisualCAD CAM and 2021. And we actually haven't released the 2021 product yet. We are releasing it in a couple of weeks. And then we have plugins for Rhinoceros 6.0 as well as 7.0. You might know that Rhino just announced their latest version of their product, Rhino 7.0, with a lot of exciting features. We are happy to announce that our product, our plugin, RhinoCAM 2021, which we released last week, or this week we released it, actually does run in Rhino 7.0 and takes advantage of all the do sub D features and all of that. They will be showing some of those in his portion of the webinar. And then we also have a product called VisualCAM for SolidWorks. It's completely integrated inside SolidWorks, and it's a gold certified product. So if you're using SolidWorks or using Parametric Model or more of the engineering marketplace, that this would be the product we would recommend. And as far as our CAM products, we have multiple modules inside our CAM product. Some of these are separately priced. Some of these come with your maintenance subscription. So we have the Mill Pro module, which is our flagship module. This is our mainline product. And then we also have a 2-axis turning module and parts nesting module that will allow you to do both true shape and rectangular nesting. We also have a G-code editor module, and then finally a profile nesting. If you are interested in doing profile nesting or profile toolpath nesting, for in cases of plasma cutter or water jets or things of that nature. This would be a really good module for that. We also have CAD modeling modules. As part of the VisualCAD front-end modeler that we ship with the standalone CAD/CAM product, of course, you get all the 2D and the 3D modeling. But apart from that, we also have modules called Art and Mesh. The Art module runs both inside VisualCAD/CAM and in RhinoCAM, and it allows you to do some artistic 3D modeling. You could take bitmaps and convert them to 3D models for machining. Take bitmaps and black and white pictures and convert them to linear or vector art for machining as well, and use it in machining. And then finally, we have the Mesh module that runs both in the VisualCAD/CAM as well as the RhinoCAM product. This is a really interesting module. If you're working with meshes, large point data, and things of that nature, this module would be ideal for you to clean up the data and regularize the meshes, so you have meshes with the uniform triangles, and that would be worth a look as well. And finally, a little bit about the module levels. We have different levels depending on your needs and your budget, and we offer different levels. We start with the Express, which is the least expensive product, and obviously it's got the least amount of functions. And as you get better, as you get more sophisticated, you can step up to Standard and Expert, Professional, and Premium. Premium is our full-blown, which has got everything in our arsenal, basically, and it's got all the way in milling. It's all the way from 2.5 axis all the way up to 5 axis continuous milling. So that's pretty much a quick overview of our products. We'll talk a little bit about where you can get more information at the end. And before we do that, we are now at the demo portion of our webinar. So, and Uday will be running the demo. So Uday, take it away.
Thank you, Joe. Hello, everyone, and thank you again for joining us for this month's webinar. As Joe mentioned earlier, this is an open webinar, and today we will be covering what's new in our MechSoft CAM 2021 products. So we will be starting with the enhancements that we have for the VisualCAD products. We will touch upon some of the enhancements in VisualCAD. Then we will cover the enhancements that are specific to RhinoCAM, and we will then cover enhancements in our milling module, starting with 2.5 axis milling enhancements, 3 axis milling enhancements, multi-axis, this would be like 4 axis enhancements and 5 axis, usability, other notable enhancements in 2021. We will also be covering enhancements in our turning module, G-code editor module, profile nesting, and parts nesting module as well. So without any further delays here, I will be starting the actual product demonstration. The first thing I'm going to be doing here is cover the enhancements in VisualCAD/CAM. So to do this, I currently have a drawing open in VisualCAD/CAM 2021. And as you can see, the VisualCAD/CAM has a ribbon interface at the top where you have access to all of your VisualCAD tools, and then you can access all of the CAM modules by selecting VisualCAM 2021 from the drop-down menu, which will give you access to mill, turn, profile nest, G-code editor, mesh, nest, art. All of the modules can be accessed from the menu. So the enhancements for VisualCAD that we are going to be first covering is a new tool called Curve Boolean. Basically, this allows you to perform Boolean operation on curve geometries. These could be open or closed curve geometries. Boolean operations would include unite, subtract, and intersection. So as you go to the curve modeling tab, you will find a new command called Curve Boolean. So as you select the command, you can pick the curves that you'd like to curve Boolean. So I'm just going to drag a window to select these objects in here. Right-click or press Enter to accept selections, and you can choose from the Boolean options in here. So I'm going to select to delete the input curves. I'll pick all, and since I want to first do a union, I'm going to just click outside in here, and you'll see that the highlighted regions are the ones that are going to be retained, and picking Enter will basically perform a Boolean operation Now, basically, this is combined and merged into one single curve geometry. So I can undo this, go back and perform the curve Boolean again, select the objects, right click to enter, and then when I click on the inside, it'll basically do this subtraction. You can see that the difference of the two. Now, if you also have an open geometry, like a line or a curve that's cutting through this here, we can do a curve Boolean as well. So I'm going to repeat the curve Boolean command, select the objects, then I can choose the one I would like to retain, and click OK. So it's a very powerful tool that can be used for performing various curve Boolean operations in VisualCAD CAM 2021. Now, the next new tool I would like to introduce here in VisualCAD CAM 2021 is going to be array along curve or array along path. So I have a couple of curves that are modeled in here, which I would like to array along one of these curves. So I could go ahead and pre-select the curves. As I pre-select the curves that needs to be arrayed, you will notice that a new tab appears in your ribbon interface under Modified Transform. So you go into Modified Transform and you'll see a new command called Along Path. So this will array the objects along the path. You pick the path curve. So I'm going to pick one of these as my path curve, and I can specify the number of instances, or I could do the distance between instances, and you also have the additional options for orientation as well. So I'm going to set the number of instances to 5. So it'll be 5 additional instances. Click OK, and this would create a total of 5 instances, as you can see. So array along curve. And this is available in VisualCAD CAM 2021 as part of all the VisualCAD features. Now, one other enhancements I would like to point out here in VisualCAD CAM 2021 is the text preview command. So as you create text, and you can type in the text to be created, you will notice that the preview appears right in your graphic screen. You could change your text height, and the preview automatically updates in real time as you're creating it. So before you create the text and place them, you can actually take a look at the text preview. Now, this can also be applied in text along curve, and the text to create dialog stays active until you hit cancel. So you can create multiple lines of text or multiple text without having to go back to click and invoke the command each time. So the dialog stays active until you hit cancel to exit the command. Likewise, on the text on curve command, you can pick the curve that you'd like to place the text on, type the text, and you can choose the text justification, and each of these are automatically being previewed as you pick the justification option. You can also flip vertical. So all of these are automatically previewed as you start creating them. So these are some of the enhancements in VisualCAD that I would like to demonstrate here today during our webinar. The next enhancement I'm going to be covering here is enhancements that are specific to RhinoCAM, and I will be covering this starting with Rhino 7. As you all know, RhinoCAM 2021 is certified to run in Rhino 7, the latest version of Rhino, as well as Rhino 6 64-bit. So if you're running Rhino 6 or Rhino 7, 2021 version will be fully compatible with these versions. Now, one of the biggest improvements in Rhino 7 is sub-D modeling, and you can find the sub-D tools in Rhino under the sub-D menu bar. And as you have Rhino installed and RhinoCAM installed, you'll see that the RhinoCAM menu appears at the top just before the help menu in Rhino, and you will be able to select the RhinoCAM menu to access all of the different modules, starting with mill, turn, profile nest, G-code editor, mesh, nest, art, all of these modules. Now, what I have here is a sample sub-D model of a car, and RhinoCAM can machine be generated toolpath for native sub-D geometries that you create in Rhino. So I have programmed a few toolpaths in here. We have roughing, finishing toolpaths that have been generated for the sub-D models, sub-D geometries in Rhino. And I'm also going to go ahead and quickly run a simulation of these in here by selecting the play button. Let me go ahead and enable the stock display here. So we're running roughing followed by a pre-finishing operation, which could be like a parallel finishing. Then I have a final finishing operation, which could be like a 3D offset pocketing. You could always speed up the simulation by selecting either pause or simulate to end, or use the slider control under preferences to change the simulation speed. Now, to program individual sub-D surfaces, you can enable that in the options in here. In the sub-D modeling tools, you can select individual faces, and then you can go into a operation in here, and then select part surfaces, and you can pick individual surfaces that you'd like to program as well. So with the sub-D, so I'm just going to pick a handful of these surfaces, accept the selections, and generate the toolpath. And I can go back and change any of the parameters as well. So RhinoCAM 2021 in Rhino 7 supports programming for native sub-D geometries. Now, the next thing I will be covering here is starting with our enhancements in our mill module in CAM 2021. Now, these enhancements are going to be common to both VisualCAD CAM and RhinoCAM, and also our VisualCAM for SolidWorks products. I will be covering most of these enhancements in our RhinoCAM products, but the workflow and the options that are available would be exactly the same whether you're running VisualCAD CAM or RhinoCAM. So the first enhancement I would be covering in the mill module is going to be the enhancements that are specific to 2.5 axis milling. We will be starting with what is called a new machining operation in 2 axis, or also known as 2.5 axis milling, called face stop operation. Now this 2.5 axis face stop, as the name suggests, is basically an operation that can be used for facing your stock material, your stock blank, and this could be done in a single pass using the face stop operation, using a single cut only, or you can do multiple cuts, and you also have the option to specify cut area expansion, where you can set in a length offset and a width offset. Now, in this particular example here, I have a block that's a little over 2 inches wide, and it's several inches long. And with the face stop operation, we can generate a single cut path. So you can run this to basically be able to effectively, face off the top of the material in one cut or in a single pass. And you can also have multiple levels specified, where you have the cut level control, where you can specify the number of levels. And you can also, set the cut area expansion for the length offset and the width offset necessary. In this particular case, I could change my length offset from inch to 1.5 inches, regenerate the path, and go back and run the simulation.
I just want to interject here. The important thing to understand here in this operation is it's looking at your stock model. And so it's looking at both your stock and your part geometry, and putting in a toolpath between the stock and the part, just to remove this stock so that the stock is flush with the top of the part. So you don't actually have to pick anything, but you could. If you're using curves for generating toolpaths, yes, you may want to pick the curves, but if you don't, it'll look at the 3D geometry. Thanks, Uday.
Thank you, Joe. The next example I'll be covering in the face stop operation is how we can generate multiple passes. Now, this particular example, if you take a look at the model from the top view, you can see that the part is not, oriented like any of either of the edges of the part are not parallel to either X or Y coordinate axis. It's at an angle, like a tilted angle. I don't know what the angle is. It could be 45, it could be 30. So once you have your stock defined and you go into the face stop operation here, you have the ability to automatically compute the optimum cut angle based on the XY orientation of the stock and the part. So you compute optimum angle. When this is selected, it'll automatically orient the face top operation, the toolpath, to be parallel to the XY orientation of the stock block. So I have this toolpath generated. As you can see here, it's basically oriented along the orientation, XY orientation of the stock. You could also specify both extensions along length as well as in the width. As you can see here, the cut area expansion. Again, it's looking at the stock, as Joe pointed out, and we have not selected any control geometry or not picked any regions in here. So this is automatically determined based off the stock orientation and the part orientation. Now, if I clear this checkbox for compute optimal cut angle and generate it, it's going to be generating based on the XY orientation or the angle of cut that you specify in here, which is similar to how you noticed in our two-axis facing operation, but with the face top, you have the option to automatically compute the optimum cut angle. And as you generate it, it'll be aligned in the same orientation as the stock, the way the stock is oriented. So the next, sorry.
I just wanted to say, Uday, if you wanted to just explain, as you explain these operations, what configurations they're available in, that'll be useful.
Sure, we'll certainly do, Joe. Now, the face top operation is available starting with standard and higher configurations in our mill module. So standard, expert, pro, and premium will include face top operations. So the next topic we'll be covering in 2.5 axis mill enhancements is going to be engraving. We are going to be covering bridges and tabs in engraving, and we'll talk about how we can now use bridges and tabs in 2-axis engraving. So I will be pulling in a file and sharing my screen with you here in just a moment. We will be covering bridges and tabs with 2-axis engraving. So I have an example of a part which is basically the neck of a guitar, and I've offset these curves to program an engraving toolpath, and the curves that you're seeing here are not on parallel to the XY plane. So you can program engraving to follow along a curve that's non-planar. It could be 2D or a 3D curve, open or closed. And with the 2021 the latest version release, you have the option now to specify bridges and tabs. Now this is very similar to how you can do bridges and tabs in profiling. We now have the option to specify bridges and tabs in engraving as well, starting with this latest version. So you could specify the number of bridges that you'd like to insert. You could also specify the height and then the bridge length under Advanced Cut Parameters tab. So this could be done for both planar and non-planar curve geometries. Here's an example. I'll run a quick simulation so you can actually see the bridges being created. Now, this option of bridges and tabs will be available in standard and higher configurations with our mill module in the latest version of our CAM products. Now, the next set of enhancements I will be covering are going to be in the 3-axis milling enhancements. We are excited to announce a brand new 3-axis toolpath method. It is called adaptive roughing. And this adaptive roughing toolpath will generate toolpaths with a constant cutter engagement. Adaptive roughing, so very similar to how you noticed the high-speed options that you are familiar with in our previous releases that were available in pocketing and roughing operations. Now, adaptive roughing is available as a as an add-on module in 3-axis, and you could take advantage of constant cutter engagement. As you can see how both open pockets and closed pockets can be programmed very effectively with adaptive roughing toolpaths, which basically results in constant cutter engagement, which prolongs your tool life and reduces your tool wear. Now, this method can be added on to any of our mill module configurations, starting with standard. Am I correct, Joe?
Yes, that's correct. Right now, the way we have released 2020 at this point, it's going to be only from professional and above. But I think people have been asking us to add it to standard, so we will modify that, and you'll see that in the service pack pretty soon. So,
okay. So here's an example of adaptive roughing toolpath and the cut material simulation for adaptive roughing, and you'll find this under the 3-axis methods and adaptive roughing. I'm going to go ahead and pull in one other example for an adaptive roughing toolpath in here, where you can actually take a look at how adaptive roughing can be applied for different types of geometries. So here I have a 3D mold, and we have the adaptive roughing toolpath, which shows constant cutter engagement, and you can see the cutter starts from the outside and works its way in, resulting in creating a constant uniform cutter engagement. Okay, so the next enhancement in 3-axis milling I'll be covering is the cut transfers that we've introduced in high-speed operations, in high-speed cut pattern operations. Now, to demonstrate this, I will be taking in one of the examples of our high-speed cut pattern toolpaths, which most of you are familiar with. High-speed cut patterns can be used in 3-axis roughing, 2-axis pocketing, and 2-axis roughing methods. Now, with the high-speed cut pattern, as you go into the cut parameters tab, and once you select high speed, you'll have the option to specify the cut lift under transfer cut control, and specifying a cut lift will automatically create this arc and the linear motion to basically lift the cutter as you are running this linear motion while you're transitioning between these constant cutter engagement passes here. So automatically results in the cut lift to transfer over and not having to run at the same level, cut level, as the way the toolpaths are generated for the constant tangential cut pattern.
yeah, this was an enhancement some of you had requested because that was actually leaving tool marks on the part as the cut traverses, from one tangential arc to the other. It would actually drag the cutter along the already cut surface, and that would leave tool marks. So this one would take care of that. Thank you.
And this enhancement is included starting with standard configuration and up. So standard, expert, pro, and premium, all of the configurations mentioned will include this enhancement for the cut lift. One of the other enhancements I would also like to cover here in 3-axis, while we're on the 3-axis topic, is the enhancement for horizontal finishing, or also known as our Z-level finishing toolpath. This allows you to basically specify or pick start points in horizontal finishing. So in the example here, I've generated the horizontal finishing as you typically have done in our previous versions. Now, as you can see, the cutter enters and leaves the material at a predetermined location. So we did not have a control over specifying where you want the cutter to enter and leave the material. Now with 2021, you now have the option to specify the start points. So you can go into the start points tab in horizontal finishing, and you can pick or select the start point. And these could be points that you have modeled in the CAD. So I can pick a start point here. And since this has both an exterior and an interior cut, I can pick one for each. Right click. And as I generate it, this would apply the entry and exit at the location as the closest to the location where you pick the start point. Now, I forgot to mention that the start point option picking is also available in 2-axis profiling when I covered the 2-axis enhancements, but it is also available in 2-axis as well. So this is start point in 3-axis horizontal finishing. This is available. Horizontal finishing is included in standard, expert, pro, and premium configurations. So you can specify start points in horizontal finishing. As I mentioned, it's also available in 2-axis profiling as well. You can go ahead and go to the Start Points tab and pick Start Point, and you can pick a start point in profiling, and as you generate it, it'll apply this, entry and exit where you had the start point defined. So start point selection is available in 3-axis horizontal finishing as well as 2-axis profiling. Okay, we are now ready to take a look at enhancements in our multi-axis toolpath. Now for this, I'm going to be covering 2 main enhancements. Number 1 is the ability to specify multiple step downs in 4-axis projection pocketing toolpath. So in this particular example, I have a 4-axis projection pocketing toolpath program. So this 4-axis projection pocketing toolpath projects the toolpath to the underlying solid surface geometry or mesh geometry. You now have the option to go ahead and do multiple step down levels. So this could be used like your roughing pass, where you can specify multiple step downs and you can specify the step down control. And as you generate, this will result in multiple step down passes by offsetting the pass radially. And you can take a look at the step down Z-level display in here as well.
So basically what we have introduced here is the ability to actually rough using this toolpath. Before it was purely a finishing method, but now we can use it for roughing as well, which is actually pretty useful in areas where the cutters has difficulty entering and leaving.
Thank you, Jim. So in this particular example, I've introduced multiple step downs. We have 3 levels, so this could be used as a roughing pass. And since we have same identical features all the way across the part, for those of you who aren't familiar, you could use what is called a rotary instance. So the same can be applied to all of the identical features. We have a total of 6 of them. So I was able to use a rotary instance feature from 4-axis to apply that. So without having to go ahead and program each and every of the each and every feature as a pocketing toolpath. Now, this 4-axis projection pocketing method is offered starting with our expert and higher configuration. So 4-axis toolpaths are included with expert. If you have expert, professional, or premium configuration, you will have access to the step down control in 4-axis projection pocketing. And all of the 4-axis methods are also offered starting with the expert configuration. The next enhancements for 4-axis I'll be covering today is going to be the enhancements to the 4-axis drive surface machining, or also known as our true 4-axis machining toolpath method. We were familiar with the 4-axis drive surface machining, which had 2 cut patterns we offered in our previous versions, which were along axis and across axis. Now with the along and across axis, you might end up with some, the cut transition, the step over, that it may result in some tool marks in some cases. So as you can see, here is an example of the across cut pattern. As you can see, the step over, as you go from one pass to the next pass, creates a linear motion, which could result in some tool marks. So to eliminate that, we've introduced an option to automatically use a helical cut pattern. So there wouldn't be any step over tool marks, as it's going to result in a constant one continuous helical tool path as you basically program a true 4-axis toolpath in here. So I'm going to run a simulation or animation without the cut material, and you can see it results in a constant helical path, and you can control the step over and the other parameters and the direction as well. Again, this enhancements is available starting with our expert configuration in both VisualCAD CAM and RhinoCAM, as well as VisualCAM for SolidWorks. So Expert, Pro, and Premium will include the 4-axis enhancements. And the next set of enhancements I will be covering today are going to be our usability enhancements. Now, these enhancements would be, one of the enhancements is going to be the option to be able to clone of machining operations. I will be covering that by using an example in here. and we'll also be looking at a few other examples. So for cloning is basically making a copy of your machining operation. So if I want to do a profiling operation for the inside, rather than doing a right-click copy and a right-click paste, you could just do it in one click by selecting clone. So selecting clone makes a copy of the same operation. So right-click and clone basically duplicates the operation without having to go through 2 button clicks. It's just a single button click, and this enhancement is available in all our configurations of our mill module, and also it's available in turn modules as well. So cloning allows you to make a copy of the operation without having to do a copy and a paste. One of the other notable enhancements in usability is the MOPs, or the machining operations information. So right click on a setup, and if you go to information, you now have the spindle speed information also available in the MOPs info dialog. So the spindle speed information has been added, and this enhancement is available in all our configurations, all our product configurations. There's a couple of more enhancements I'm going to be covering here. The next one is going to be the enhancements on hole selection, and how we can select holes, enhancements to hole selection in operations like hole pocketing and hole profiling. So with the latest version, as you program hole profiling or hole pocketing, you now have the ability to specify filters for both for the diameter range filter. So once you pick a bunch of holes, you can apply a filter by specifying the min and the max diameter. I could specify the minimum diameter and the maximum diameter, and it'll automatically filter out the holes of that specific diameter range. So this option only used to be available in hole making, like drilling operations in the previous releases. Starting with the latest version, you now have the option to specify this in both hole profiling as well as hole pocketing operation. Both these methods, hole profiling and hole pocketing, are offered in standard and higher configurations. So standard, expert, pro, and premium configurations will include these enhancements for hole profiling and hole pocketing. The next enhancements I'm going to be covering here today will be the enhancement to fixtures. I'm going to be quickly touching upon the enhancement for fixtures that has been introduced in 2021. With this release, you could now when you make changes to your fixtures. So for example, in this particular setup, I have 3 operations programmed. I haven't added any fixtures to the setup. So as you edit the setup, go into the Fixtures tab and activate a set of fixtures and generate it. It'll automatically associatively flag the operations when the changes to the fixtures were made. Right-click and regenerate will automatically account for those fixtures. So if I modify my fixture setup, toggle it from fixture 1 to fixture 2, or enable both of them, the operations are flagged dirty. Right-click and regenerate, and your machining operations, the toolpaths, are automatically updated as you make changes to the fixtures. Okay, so the next set of enhancements we'll be covering here is, we call these other enhancements. These are going to be our post-processor enhancements, simulation, toolpath editor, and knowledge base and feeds and speeds enhancements. Now, we've introduced a brand new way of post-processing. The legacy way of post-processing still works using your post-process generator that is available to you in both in VisualCAM and RhinoCAM. We've introduced a new way, what's called a programmable post-processor, where you can use Python language for scripting these post-processors, and you can script the all the events, and basically as you generate and post-process, it'll be able to use those Python scripting language that you've used for for these post processors in here. Now, this is used for advanced users who want to basically make specific edits and modifications to the post processor, and this can be done using Python programming language. I'm not going to get into a lot of details in here, but we can certainly make the documentation, everything available to you. But as you can see here, you can script each and every event handlers in the post processor and write your own scripting using Python language for a programmable post processor. Now, the legacy post processor that you're currently using will still continue to work in our 2021 version for those of you who are looking to make some customizations and additional controls that you're looking for, which may not be available in the legacy post processor, can be done using the programmable post processor.
Yeah, actually, let me add a word there, Uday. This is actually a major enhancement, even though it might not be apparent. There's a lot of work that went under the hood. And this adds a new level of functionality for our post processors for some of our more larger and more sophisticated enterprise customers who wanted the ability to write their own posts. So this would come in really handy where each of the operation events, for instance, tool change, coolant, turning coolant on or off, whenever you hit a rapid motion, whenever you hit a cut motion, if you want to do something special, this would be the way to do it. We had spent a lot of time working on customized posts for users, and if you have the ability to program using the Python language, you'd be able to leverage this functionality to the fullest level possible. So we're pretty excited about this, and we're looking forward to working with you guys to make this really a powerful tool. Thank you. And this available. I'm sorry, and this is available in all our configurations. So,
thank you. So the next enhancement is we're going to be covering is enhancement to our simulation. In the Simulate tab, you will now notice that we have 3 different options that you can toggle between during simulation. The follow toolpath display, this is the one that has been available in all of our configurations in our previous releases. As I go ahead and run a simulation here, you will see that this basically displays the toolpath as the cutter is following the path. This is the follow method. Now you have the option to basically use a trace toolpath method. So basically it eliminates the ones that are already the cut material simulation has been performed, or you could select what is called a toggle to the segment toolpath, which only displays a toolpath for the segment that's currently being the cut material simulation is being performed. So you can toggle between these 3 options, and this is available in all of our configurations of our product in mill module, and it's also available in our other modules as well, like for example, the G-code editor module or the profileness module. So this is available, these 3 toggle options, the trace segment, the toggle to the other toolpath options like the follow, and also the methods can be seen, the trace method. So these 3 toggles are available in all our product configurations. Now I would like to point out a couple of other enhancements in here. We made enhancements to the toolpath editor, and I'm going to go ahead and run through the simulation here to give you an example for these. So as we go ahead and program and simulate toolpaths, and you go into the toolpath editor, we now added a brand new tab called the Backplot mode in the toolpath editor or toolpath viewer. And this, again, Backplot mode is available in all of our product configurations in the mill module. So Backplot mode is a mode where you can basically animate through the toolpath tool motions in here. You have the ability to control to pause, and as you pause it, it'll highlight the corresponding line of go-to motion in the toolpath viewer or the toolpath editor. You can step through it as well. You can unwind it. You can pause, stop it, and you also have the ability to control it. So you can even step through it like how you step through the cells in a spreadsheet by using your arrow keys on the keyboard. So you can use the backplot mode to basically step through your toolpath animation. You can basically step through that and use this as this is a very effective tool to take a look at where your cutter is and the corresponding XYZ coordinates for you to go back and validate some information, take a look and analyze your toolpath as well. Now, we've also introduced another tab called Diagnostics Tab. I'm going to bring in another example to cover the Diagnostics tab in here in our 2021 release. So this method will allow us to basically diagnose any holder collisions or any of the that are detected during the toolpath and the simulation. So I'm going to go ahead and simulate through these operations in here on this particular example. And you'll notice that there's a holder shank collision detected on the last profile operation. And as you go into the Diagnostics tab, and you can actually step to the next error in here. So as you see, when you select the operation, you step through it, it'll identify the areas where there were collisions in here. As you can tell, you can step through each of the collision areas, and it'll mark those, identify those with markers on the Diagnostics tab. Now the Diagnostics, Joe, please correct me if I'm wrong. I believe this is available starting with standard and higher configurations of our product.
That's correct. That tab will only show up for standard and higher.
The same goes with the backplot mode and the diagnostics.
Right.
Okay, thank you. All right, so these were the enhancements for our mill module. The next set of enhancements I will be covering is for our other modules, starting with our turn module enhancements. So we will be covering a couple of enhancements that were introduced in our turn module. Number one is the ability to automatically retract the tool during any programming, any ID operations in turning. Now, I have an example for a part opened in our turn module. To go from the mill to the turn module, you just select the RhinoCAM or VisualCAM from your menu, and then you pick turn to toggle from the mill or from any of the other modules to the turn module. Now, starting with our latest version, you will now notice that when you program an ID operation, it automatically creates a retract motion to retract the tool all the way out to your clearance plane. In here, retracts actually goes past the clearance plane in any of the turn ID operations that you program. So let me go ahead and simulate these operations in here, and then we'll simulate the turn finishing, and you'll notice that the cutter will retract completely outside of the material. So this is one of the enhancements that are available in turning, and the turn module comes included. If you have the standard or higher configuration or a mill module, you automatically get the turn module, or if you just have the turn module, you will see these enhancements in 2021. Also, one of the other notable enhancements in turning is ability to fit arcs to your toolpaths. So the arc fitting is available on turn toolpaths, and you can fit arcs to toolpaths by going into the Advanced Cut Parameters tab, and you can specify your arc fitting tolerance in here. And as you generate the toolpaths, arcs are being fit to your toolpaths. So arc fitting is also available in turn, roughing, finishing, and all of the turning operations, wherever it's applicable.
Yeah, the turn module also is available in all our configurations except the Express configuration. Starting up from standard, the turn module will be available. Will be included. So if you buy the standard configuration, CAM configuration, you not only get mill, you'll also get turn, you get art as well as nest.
Thank you, Joe. The next set of enhancements I'm going to be covering today is going to be enhancements to our G-code editor module. So the G-code editor module comes included if you have our maintenance subscription, and it's available starting with standard and higher configurations. If you have standard, expert, pro, or premium, you will have access to G-code editor module with a maintenance or AMS, or this module can also be purchased as a separate add-on module. So with the G-code editor module, we have had numerous enhancements. Number one is you have the ability to define different stock types in here, not just limited to part box stock. You can also do a stock from selection, so where you can import your own solid surface or a closed mesh geometry, and then you can highlight it and define stock from selection. You can define that. And we've also introduced the ability to hide or show toolpaths as you're doing a simulation in the G-code editor module, which was not available in our previous release. So as you go to the Simulate tab and then hit play to run a simulation, you now have the option to hide or show the toolpath as you're simulating. And you also have the option to enable the follow mode segment toolpath display as well. So these display toolpath toggles are available in the G-code editor module as well. So you can hide the part and the stock visibility. You can toggle them as you're simulating it or you're editing the toolpaths in the G-code editor module. So it makes it easier for you to view and analyze your cut material simulation of the posted G-code. So basically the G-code editor module allows you to bring in your posted G-code output from our mill module, or it could have been programmed and you may have received the G-code file from another program. You can bring it in, you can run a verification, you can backplot, run the simulation, make changes, any changes necessary in here in the G-code editor module. So as you go into the edit mode, you can also notice that we have one other notable enhancement where we can do a find and replace. So this is basically a new option that's available in our 2021 release, where you can identify, and do text and perform replace with, like, for example, if you want to replace, a certain, like a tool number, or you want to change your spindle RPM, you can always go ahead and do a find and replace in here rather than having to look or search for them manually and make those changes in the G-code editor module. So you could toggle part visibility, stock visibility. You could also toggle the toolpath visibility by using the controls that are available at the base of the G-code editor module. Now, last but not the least, I'm going to be demonstrating the enhancements to our nesting and the profile nesting module in both.
Uday, before you jump into that, I just wanted to mention the G-code editor module is free for all our maintenance customers. So if you're an active AMS customer or annual maintenance subscription, if you're active on that, you will have access to the G-code editor module. So which is actually a pretty powerful module. It's not restricted to be used with the G-code that we generate. You could have old G-code, or you could have another CAM system, and we could work with those G-code files as well. Thanks, Uday.
Thank you, Joe. Okay, so the last module I'm going to be covering today is the enhancements that are made to our profile nesting module. And profile nesting module is also a module that's included with maintenance for customers who have standard or higher configurations. So standard, expert, pro, and premium with maintenance will also include the profile nesting module. So you can go up to the CAM menu and select profile nest, and this will automatically switch over to the profile nesting module in here. And the profile nesting module interface looks very similar to our mill module interface. And as we mentioned earlier, this module allows you to generate profiling toolpaths and nest the profiling toolpaths into a sheet, which could be used for your plasma, laser, or it could be even used for water jet. Now, one of the notable enhancements here I would like to point out here is as you go ahead and define your sheets, you now have the option to rename the sheet. So I can rename the sheet that you created by using select curves. You can pick the curves and then define a sheet, and you can rename it. I could say this is a sheet that's 4x4. I can rename my sheet in here and go back, and once I make changes, I would have to execute the nest. Right click and execute. It'll basically go back and re-execute the nest in here. And as I select the sheet, it previews the profile toolpaths that are nested to the sheet. Now, we could also define sheets by specifying a name for the sheet, giving it a length and a width. So let's say I want to do a sheet that's 48 by 48, give it a thickness for the sheet, and I'm going to add the sheet in here. So we have a new sheet added, but if I want to place the sheet at an offset distance from the main sheet, we can specify the X offset. I'm going to put in X offset of 50 inches, and then I'm going to hit update sheet. So this allows you to update the sheet. So in the past, you weren't able to specify an offset or not able to make changes. You can now modify, make changes, and then update the sheet. And you can also change the quantity of the sheet in here. So I'm going to update the quantity in here. And as I go ahead and right click and execute the nest, you will notice that they're nested one to the sheet that you picked using a curve. The other one was defined by just specifying a length and a height for the sheet. So these enhancements in the profile nest module for defining the sheet, renaming the sheet, and updating are also available in both profile nesting and also the parts nesting module as well. The profile nesting module, again, is included for customers who have annual maintenance, starting with standard and higher configurations. And there's a couple of other enhancements, and in profile nesting, you will now notice that the execute nest command is available right in your ribbon interface on the nest tab. You will notice this as well. And we can also update the sheets. As I pointed out, we can add multiple sheets and update the sheet information without having to delete and recreate the sheets.